I'm actually mad about that. And it upsets me because I'm just wondering, why wouldn't Brittany call me and say, hey, this is what I'm going through? And you know, I think you know, I hope you know that we would have jumped. Remember, we'd come to California.
I know.
We would have done whatever we need to do. Why did you allow the isolation? Hey, I'm Roosevelt May. I'm here with Brittany Lewis. We're actually cousins. I'm her older cousin, and we're basically doing a series of podcasts to kind of, talk about her life, her journey, and we're just gonna rip the Band-Aid off and kind of get right to it. Brittany, last podcast we were talking about your journey to California.
Mm-hmm.
You moved from Louisiana as a traveling nurse, moved to California, talked about your experiences there. But one thing I kind of want to touch on real quick before we move on to the next section is you had a rebirth. Something happened when you moved to California, and there was a transformation that happened for you, changed your life. Can you share?
Yes. So several things happened in California for me. One of the things that I would say is, all of my life, people told me like I was a light, and I didn't really understand what that meant to me. I mean, what that meant when people said that to me. Because it was always people that I was familiar with.
Right.
But once I got to California, I would just be having like general, simple conversations. People would just be kind of expressing, I don't know, let's just say like, hey, boyfriend problems or issues with their children.
Right.
And I mean like young and old. And then they would just pull me over later and tell me like, you are light, like your wisdom, your, like I enjoy talking to you, all these types of things. And so it was then in California where I was able to be like, you know what, I need to start feeling safe and I need to sit in, I am a light. And it's okay to be that light. Because I would share that back home with friends and they'll be like, what do you mean you're a light? They didn't understand it. So then I would try to hide that light to conform to be who I needed to be in those circles. But once I got to California on these different travel assignments with these different women that know nothing about me, or they would start just talking about something, and I would just find myself like, hey, can I suggest something to you? Like, hey, can I say this? And then I would say these things, and then they would come back and be like, hey, you know what you said to me? I went home and I did this. And you know what you told me to try? I did this.
Right.
And so I learned like, hey, you know what? I am that light, and you got to be safe, and you got to sit in that. So start being her. You need to start operating in a higher you.
Right.
So that was one of my transformations there. Another one of my transformations there that very few people know about. At one point in California, when my mom got sick, my mom had a brain injury. She got sick in Louisiana. At that time, my income was the only income we had. So I was flying back to Louisiana to care for my mom.
Right.
Then I would fly to California, work my 3 shifts. I was having to pay for people to sit with my mom, go work my shifts, come back. My son's in school, paying someone to watch my son. And somewhere in the midst of all of that, I have no money to pay for where I would lay my head. So I'm flying into California as a travel nurse, sleeping in my car.
Right.
So I'm homeless in California.
Wow.
So that experience really taught me what I was made of.
Wow.
Like seriously. I'm sleeping in the garage of my hospital in my Hyundai Sonata. Setting my alarm, getting up, showering in my job, getting up, working a full 12-hour shift, going to get me food with my friends in California, eating our normal breakfast. Okay, y'all, I'm going home. They going home too. My home is my car.
Wow. That is unbelievable.
When I knew that I could endure that by myself, it was nothing that I knew I could not do.
Folks, I told you, this is getting really serious here. Let me ask you this. Why didn't you just throw in the towel? Why didn't you just say, listen, I'm going back home, um, and just get out of that situation? What was it that kept you going back, doing it over and over and over again?
I can't be, I mean, I have to be transparent here. I can't tell you that was not a thought.
Right.
But here's the thing, if the money that I was managing properly then was not getting the job done, what was going home, getting a job, making less going to do?
Mm-hmm.
It still didn't make sense.
Mm-hmm.
So at some point, like I even had to cut out like what I was eating to catch up. So if I mean, I'm making $4,800 a week, and then I'm also paying for this $800 flight to go back and to go forth. And I think I even called you one time for a flight. And the money that I got from you is what gave me the room to catch up.
Wow.
So at that point, it was just like going home and getting a job is not going to fix it. I just had to push through it.
You know, I think and I'm sitting here and, I'm actually mad about that. And, it upsets me because I'm just wondering, why wouldn't Brittany call me and say, hey, this is what I'm going through? And I think I hope that we would have jumped. We'd come to California.
I know.
We would have done whatever we need to do. Why did you allow the isolation? Was it embarrassment? What was it? I mean, tell the audience, what was that? What was that about?
I wasn't embarrassed about anything. I mean, even when I had the heart issue, I still remember Davina calling me and saying, hey, we can come up there. Like, I can get a flight out tomorrow. And I told her, no, I'm fine. It wasn't, I mean, I could call you at any time to make an easy fix for me. I know that. But I choose not to because how am I going to grow up? I have to learn how to figure it out. So just like, other people, I want my resources to be there when I have absolutely nothing else.
Sure.
I don't want to abuse a resource versus other people's mindset may be different. Like, hey, I'm going to take as much as I can. Mm-hmm. But as long as you're taking, are you really developing you? So for me, if I could just, call you for this one flight, mm-hmm. this one time, mm-hmm. this $800, or I think it was like almost $900 flight, just once.
Right.
And I think I kind of explained briefly. I never told you I was sleeping out of my car.
No, you didn't.
But I just was like, hey, you think you could get me this flight home?
Right.
So I can get there for mama.
Sure.
But that just gave me catch-up room. And within the next 2 weeks, I was like, okay. So I mean... And that also gave me, that isolation time, I mean, that developed me. So then that taught me, like, hey, from now on, like, this money does not just keep coming, Because honestly, at the time, I only saw, like, hey, okay, this is $4,800. Go do whatever you want with this money for the week, and the next week is coming. I was living, like, Friday to Friday because we got paid every week.
Sure.
But once mama got sick and I had to sleep in that car and go through that, then the lesson there was you never know what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. So stop living week to week. I don't care how much money you make.
Right.
So that was a lesson there for me.
This is, for the audience, just for a minute, talking to Brittany Lewis. Brittany, obviously a traveling nurse, lived a few places. We're talking about California. But Brittany, let me ask you this. Was there a what was again? I think I want to know for sure, and I believe the audience wants to know. The desire. Did you feel at any point that you had to hold up other folk? You had to make sure other folk were taken care of in this transition, which ultimately had you sleeping in your car. Was there other people? I'm not talking about your mama and your moms and being able having to take care of her stuff, but was there other folk mm-hmm. that was in your pocket?
Yes, there were.
But a man. Give me.
Yes, there was. And honestly, looking back, I mean, I don't regret giving to anyone, but it was to my detriment.
Yes.
And that's where, but that was another lesson that has shaped me for now.
Absolutely.
You know, of course, I've been a lot of people, and I'm not gonna say that I regret it actually, because now it has taught me who to be.
Right.
You know, financially.
Right.
But very much so.
Sure.
Yes.
Sure.
You know, call Brittany. Ask
Right.
Brittany. Yeah,
Absolutely.
Brittany got it. Brittany will do it for you.
Right.
Yes.
Yes. Well, I mean, I completely understand. Again, let's kind of shift gears a little bit. Let's talk about the grieving that you went through.
Okay.
In your within that time frame. Let's talk about that. I know you lost your auntie. Talk about that and the people that you lost and how it affected you.
Okay. So maybe within 1 to 2 years, I lost one friend to childbirth, friend to COVID, another friend in an accident, and lastly a friend to COVID again.
Okay.
And actually, I'm leaving. No, so a total of 3 friends to COVID.
Yes.
1 to childbirth and 1 in a accident.
And your stepdad.
Huh?
And your stepdad. You lost your stepdad.
Yes. Well, I lost my stepdad prior to, or right after nursing school.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Him as well. Yeah. I did not realize, but just over time, just the compacted grief, I guess. But one of the most, I guess, traumatic events that kind of brought up all that grief that I buried over time was my friend Kayla that I met in California. So I met Kayla working at Mills Peninsula, which was my first travel assignment.
Right.
Funny thing is, me and Kayla did not get along at first.
Okay.
Like, I was like, girl, who are you? She just like rolled up on me like, hey, who are you? And I was like, who are you? Like, what do you want?
Right.
She was like in my personal space.
Right.
And I'm like, what is it that you need? Because I was looking up like a vacation on the computer. And so she was like, where you going? And I was like, what is it to you? Like, what do you want?
Right.
And she just like she would not leave me alone. And I was like, okay, what is it? And so she's like, where you going? You want to go on vacation? And I'm like, I don't even know you.
Right.
Anyways, we started talking. She's like, well, do you have your passport? And I'm like, no. She's like, well, why are you looking at vacations? You can't go anywhere. Duh.
Right.
And I was like, listen, like, you got one more time.
Right.
She's like, well, you could get your passport, you know, overnight. It just costs money. So I was like, can I? Because I know nothing about a passport at this point. And so she's like, yeah, you can. So just do this, this, and that. And I'm pretending like I'm not listening to her, but I'm really like taking it all in.
Sure.
And so I go on there, do like the rush passport. And so I'm getting my passport back, and she's like, you know, I saw you went on there and print out your passport stuff. Did you get it? And I was like, that's not your business. Like, it's not my business. And she was like, okay, you off this weekend? And I was like, yeah. She's like, oh, okay. You want to go to Mexico? And I was like, in my head, I'm like, I don't really know her like this. But because she had it like all mapped out. Like, okay, we get off this morning, we can go here. We can come back here. We can stay here. Now, mind you, I've never been anywhere out of the country. So I'm like, all right, yeah, sure, let's go. So we're at work. We booked the trip. We go on the trip. Go, like, have a good time. Come back. I don't even know if it's legal for us to tell this, but we get back at like 6 that evening. We got to be at work 7 at night.
Wow.
So went on our trip, came back, and went to work, and we like tight as thieves ever since then. I worked labor and delivery, and she worked like postpartum. We actually left Mills Peninsula and went to our second job together, and I started training her to labor and delivery. So we were like pretty tight. Byron called her like his aunt. Like, we got really, really close. So Kayla and another friend of ours ended up going on a trip on his plane, and they just never came back. So it was like maybe like 5 to 6 of us who's like, hey, have you heard from Kayla today? No. Have you heard from Justin today? No. Have you heard from Kayla? No. Have you heard from Justin? No. So we're all just kind of going back and forth. Well, we know they were going here, And they were definitely on the plane because Kayla sent me an Instagram. There were fires in Novato. She sent us a DM. So we're all just like trying to speculate and go back and forth like, hey, let's not freak out yet. Let's call their phones. Let's do this. Let's do that. So finally, we maybe like 2 or 3 days in, we all like go to her house. It's like super weird because her car is there. We like going through all that stuff because mind you, in California, like everybody got roommates.
Right.
So we can get in the houses.
Right.
I mean, cars are there. Like it's like a Lifetime movie. Literally a Lifetime movie. We're going through computers trying to break passcodes. We're pinging phones, looking at location. The phones are showing that the last location is in the middle of the ocean. We're getting like teams on, foot trails. We're trying to walk the areas. We are like anything you can think of is being done to try and find them. One day we can't take helicopters up because of the fires. The next day we get up in helicopters. We're searching everywhere.
Right.
CNN picks up the footage. It's like national. Everybody can see it. Even now just talking about it, it's like a Lifetime movie.
Yes.
It's like somebody is there one day and the next is like, where are you?
Right.
So this goes on like maybe 10 to 12 days.
Right.
And then we're all like hanging out, and I want to say her dad calls us all to like an ice cream restaurant in San Francisco. And so we're all sitting down, and he's like, we're going to call off the search.
Wow.
And I was like, so that's what we're doing? We just going to stop? We're not going to keep looking? Like, we just going to give up. And I remember talking to one of our other mutual friends, and I'm like, y'all all may be okay with this, but for me, and I mean, we have a few other friends that are African American, but let's say if it's 20 of us, only 2 are African American.
Sure.
So I'm like, for us, like, we have funerals, and I need to see the body for closure.
Right.
And so they're like, okay, well, the last thing they can do is like get something to sonar and do the ocean floor, but what would that prove? Even if they found the plane on the ocean floor.
Right.
Like, what would that fix?
Right.
So then I'm just like stuck in this place, like to the point where I'm at home and I'm even having dreams like Kayla wouldn't go out like that.
Right.
Like, come to me in a dream. Come tell me something. Like, this is not right. Something is not right. Like, this girl done found some man and went on an escapade somewhere. She gonna come back. So I'm just like highly dysfunctional at this time because this is nothing I've ever experienced. Like, everybody before that has died, and I get to go to a wake, and I get to go to a funeral, and I see a body, and I know it's real. So then I'm like, okay, you've transitioned. But her, like, I'm looking for you. I'm calling your phone. Your car is at home. We're looking for Justin. Your car's still here. Like, it just don't make sense.
Sure.
And where's your plane?
Right. Right.
Like, we got air traffic control. Like, really, where are y'all? So we get through all of that, and they're just like, okay, well, we're going to have memorial services for them. And I'm just like, I don't think I can do this. Like, how am I going to even be able to do this? So I'm just like, okay, the only thing I can do is show up. At this point, like, I'm numb. All I know to do is show up. So we go, and we show up. And honestly, all I remember is, like, all of the different people. And mind you, I've never met her family or anyone in her family before because she is from Santa Barbara.
Okay.
So we were only in San Francisco.
Okay.
So all of her friends, family, everybody kept saying, like, you remind us of Kayla. Me and Kayla look nothing alike. So they have to be talking about, like, spirit. We act alike. Yeah. So everybody I run into at her memorial, like, you act just like Kayla. Like, oh, my God, you act just like Kayla. So we get through the memorial service, and I'm like, okay, that's it. Like, we done. So I go back home to my room, and I have a roommate, and she's, constantly checking on me, like, you okay? And I'm like, yeah. I mean, because what do I do?
Right.
It's time to go back to work now. There's money to be made. So I'm going through the motions. I go to work. I'm still, even when I come home, the time that I should be sleeping, I'm not sleeping because I'm sitting up like this is not real. So at this point, I'm like up like hours on hours on hours. The last I remember is being up like 48 hours. And when I get to work, I'm like, I can't work safely. Can you please just put me like in postpartum? Or can you please just put me with somebody? Like I can't work safely right now. And in that, I could feel myself on the decline. And as I knew I was on a decline, I knew something was about to happen to me, but I did not know what was about to happen to me. But for those watching, they'll have to find out what's about to happen to me in the next episode.
Deep, deep. Folks, don't miss. I mean, this has been an unbelievable journey so far. I'm Roosevelt May with my cousin, Brittany Lewis, and this is unbelievable. So, what a time we're having here. Can't wait to see you guys in the next episode.